Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're getting started here. Let me thank you for joining us today for the launch of our latest report, which is called Ending Impunity in Myanmar. Can the National Unity Government of Myanmar delegate jurisdiction to the International Criminal Court? You will note the subheading of this report is a question, and the report and this event today, we hope, will answer that question for you, and it will answer that question in the affirmative. That is to say that, yes, the National Unity Government can delegate jurisdiction to the ICC, and it can enter Myanmar into the Rome Statute. My name is Matthew Smith. I'm CEO of Fortify Rights. I'm going to do my best to moderate our discussion here today while also attempting to contribute a bit along with our esteemed panelists. So just as we get started here, just a few technical points. We have a Burmese language simultaneous interpretation available for the discussion. Please take a moment now to find the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen that looks like a globe. When you click on that globe, you should be able to, you should be provided with the option of English or Myanmar/Burmese. So you can please go there and choose the language that you prefer, English or Burmese. Our esteemed panelists will speak for about 5 to 7 minutes each, and then we'll take questions at the end of the presentations. If you have a question that you would like to ask the panelists, please locate the box labeled chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you can type your questions into that box. I'm sure most people on this call are very familiar with Zoom at this point. If you'd like to, alternatively, if you'd like to ask a question verbally directly to panelists, you can please click the raise hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will unmute your microphone so that you can speak when it comes time for the Q&A part of today. When typing or asking a question, please identify your name and affiliation, as well as to whom you'd like to direct your question. We'll be giving priority, of course, to the press, that is to working journalists. So if you're a member of the media, please do identify yourself as such. But that said, everyone is welcome to raise questions and to contribute to the discussion here. I would also just like to remind everyone that today's event is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. And upon concluding today's event, it will be uploaded to the Fortify Rights YouTube channel. We have a stellar panel of inspiring speakers with us here today. I'm going to introduce all of them now in order of appearance, and then we can get into the discussion. So first, we are honored to have Carrie Kennedy joining us today. Carrie is the president of Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, and she's a founding member of the International Advisory Board at Fortify Rights. Carrie and her team have worked with communities fighting for justice and accountability around the world, including in Myanmar. And we are extremely grateful that she could join us here today. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Second, we're going to hear from Mac Mackey. And I'll join Mac in his portion of the discussion with regard to the findings of the Fortify Rights report. Mac is Fortify Rights' outside legal counsel with the international law firm Covington and Burling in Washington, D.C. Mac did a lot of work with us on the legal analysis that ultimately went into this report, and he will be sharing some key points from that. Mac, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Third, we will hear from Moon Ne Lee. Moon Ne Lee is a spokesperson from the Kachin Women's Association of Thailand, or KWAT or KWAT. Moon Ne Lee has long worked on human rights in Myanmar. We first met back in 2011 when the war in Kachin state reignited after a long ceasefire. And I think the very continued existence of her organization is an indicator of the need for accountability in Myanmar. KWAT was founded in 1999 based on the urgent needs of women at the time as a result of the ongoing war and abuses in Kachin state. Moon Ne Lee, thank you so much for joining us today. Fourth, we are also honored to have Abdul Rasheed, our good friend and colleague, joining us today. Abdul Rasheed is a Rohingya human rights defender from Myanmar. He recently survived the Myanmar military crackdown in Yangon, where he had been living for many years. And he's now in the US. He's a practitioner in residence at Columbia Law School. He's also the founder of the Rohingya Foundation, and he's a member of the Democracy and Human Rights Party in Myanmar. Since 2012, Abdul Rasheed's also documented human rights violations against Rohingya people in more than at least half a dozen countries by my count in South and Southeast Asia. Abdul Rasheed, thank you very much for being with us here today.
Thank you very much.
And last but certainly not least, we're honored to have Wuang Yeomin, the Minister of Human Rights with the National Unity Government of Myanmar. Minister Myo will deliver a special address as the final speaker on the panel today. I think many of you will be very interested in what he has to say. I know we are at Fortify Rights. As many of you are no doubt aware, following the military coup on February 1st, the committee representing the Pidongsu Lataw formed the National Unity Government, or the NUG, to fulfill the sovereign will of the people of Myanmar. Prior to his appointment to the NUG, Minister Aung Yeomin was a longtime human rights defender in Myanmar. Anyone who's paid attention to human rights in the country over the last 2 decades is certainly familiar with his great work to promote and protect human rights. Minister Myo, thank you so much for joining us today. So with those introductions and without further ado, we will now hear from Carrie Kennedy. Over to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Matt. It's always such a pleasure to be with you, and I admire your work so very, very much. Thank you to everybody at Fortify Rights for bringing us together. A very great pleasure to be here with Minister Myo, with my dear friend Abdul Rasheed, who is one of the bravest people I know in any country in the world. Moonye Lee, I'm so proud to be with you today. George Mackey, thank you for being here as well, and great to be with all of you. 3 years ago, I visited Myanmar and Bangladesh to gain an understanding of the Rohingya crisis. And despite denials from the government, everything we heard from Rohingya survivors, both in the Myanmar internment camps and in the Cox's Bazar refugee camps in Bangladesh, pointed to genocide. August 25th marks 4 years since the brutal mass expulsion of Rohingya from Rakhine State by the Tatmadaw, the same thugs now illegally ruling the country. Over the 6.5 months since the coup, Myanmar's military regime has cracked down on all forms of dissent, killing at least 1,000 individuals and arresting more than 5,000. These criminal actions should be no surprise to anyone paying attention. Indeed, they are the latest manifestation in a long history of abuse of power, wielding violence to repress civilians, including ethnic minorities such as the Muslim Rohingya. The international community's failure to hold Tatmadaw perpetrators of past massive human rights abuses accountable, including the Rohingya genocide, left open the door for the coup. Starting in early 2017, the Myanmar military trained and armed local non-Rohingya citizens. Soldiers went door to door, confiscated weapons, taking anything Rohingya might use to defend themselves. The military tore down fences around Rohingya homes, providing better lines of sight to facilitate attacks. They ousted international humanitarian groups who provided needed food and healthcare for a desperately poor population, weakening the Rohingya and removing witnesses. In late August, Fortify Rights reported 27 Myanmar army battalions comprising up to 11,000 soldiers, along with at least 3 combat police battalions, attacked. They burned villages, shot fleeing residents, gang raped girls and women as young as 5 years old. They dumped bodies in mass graves. And they forcibly exiled hundreds of thousands of women, children, and men. During our 2018 visit, we took scores of testimonies from refugees seeking shelter in thatched huts in the middle of monsoon season in Cox's Bazar, which houses 1 million Rohingya refugees. Women told me horrifying stories, details of soldiers and former neighbors who murdered and raped adults and children, set flames to mosques, and threw bodies in mass graves. One woman lifted her skirt to show me that a year after she had been raped, she was still bleeding from the trauma. Thousands of Rohingya remaining in Myanmar have been held in internment camps and urban ghettos that a United Nations investigator likened to those seen in Nazi-occupied Europe. Thousands that we know of have perished. Following the coup, many Rohingya refugees face dwindling prospects of returning home. A genocide determination is critical in sending signals to the government of Myanmar that abusers will be held accountable, deterring further abuse. We now see the military commander directly responsible for the armed forces that perpetrated the genocide, General Min Aung, who is the one who appointed himself in charge of Myanmar back in February and is now perpetrating atrocities against civilians of all backgrounds throughout the country. Under his rule, the Rohingya and other ethnic minorities are no longer the only ones targeted for violence. Powerful mass protests against the military coup continued to be widespread and met again with violence and other forms of repression. Without a concerted, coordinated effort to force an end to the Tatmada's illegal rule, peaceful protesters and other civilians will continue to be at risk of horrific violence. As I've said many times before, we cannot condone the Myanmar military government's lies with silence. Experience told the Myanmar military that they could perpetrate mass atrocities without consequences. Imagine what would have happened if 3 years ago we had held the military responsible for the genocide against the Rohingya. Do you think this coup could have even happened if we had done that when we had the opportunity? The time is now. We must hold them responsible. It's our job to prove them wrong, that they cannot get away with murder and rape and massive violations of human rights, even genocide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for your powerful remarks there. So now Mackie and I will share some key findings and recommendations from the report that's being published today, which you can find online or on social media platforms at fortifyrights.org. So briefly, chapter 1 of the report focuses on whether the National Unity Government has authority under international law to represent Myanmar. And the answer, which you'll find in the report, is yes. The report finds that under international human rights law, the National Unity Government of Myanmar has the authority of government to represent and act on behalf of Myanmar. Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, quote, "The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government," end quote. The people of Myanmar overwhelmingly accept and recognize the NUG as their democratically elected government, and by contrast, the people almost completely oppose the military junta. And that's not only because of the junta's brutality and bloodshed, as Carrie just eloquently explained, but it's also because it is an unlawful, illegitimate regime that lost an election and retaliated in blood. Although the Myanmar military is attempting to exert control over the country with lethal violence, our report explains that control over a territory or people does not necessarily provide a basis of authority to represent and act on behalf of the state. the UN has repeatedly recognized the authority of non-military officials representing states that are otherwise effectively controlled by militaries or militias. This was the case in Sierra Leone following a 1997 military coup, in Haiti following a 1991 coup, after which the UN continued to accept the credentials of the pre-coup government. In Southeast Asia, in the 80s, various Cambodian governments in exile signed multiple multilateral treaties, including key human rights treaties. So there are other examples in the report in chapter 1, all of which demonstrate that it's not necessary for all states to recognize the authority of the government. Recognition by a significant number of states could suffice. The will of the people of Myanmar, as expressed through the 2020 elections, as well as explicit acts to demonstrate a rejection of the junta, an overwhelming rejection of the junta, provides the national unity government with a very strong basis of authority of government under international human rights law to represent and act on behalf of the people of Myanmar. I'm now going to turn it over to Mackie, who can say a little bit more about the two paths to engage the International Criminal Court that are covered in the report and some other points that he'll make. Mac, over to you. Sorry, Mac, you're on mute.
Apologies. Thanks very much, Matt. As Matt alluded to, Fortify Rights' report discusses two potential options that the National Unity Government may pursue in an effort to seek justice before the International Criminal Court. I have the privilege of briefly outlining those two options for you here tonight, or today, or this morning, as the case may be. First, the National Unity Government may submit a declaration pursuant to Article 12, Paragraph 3 of the Rome Statute, in which it formally accepts the court's jurisdiction over alleged crimes that may have occurred in Myanmar territory. In that declaration, it can accept jurisdiction over such crimes for any specifically identified time frame the National Unity Government wishes, past, present, or ongoing. This option is open to all states not yet a party to the Rome Statute. Second, the National Unity Government may accede to the Rome Statute, thereby becoming a full state party to the treaty and assuming all of the rights and obligations commensurate with such status, including the ability to refer situations to the court. To do so, it must deposit an instrument of accession with the Secretary General of the United Nations, in which it sets forth Myanmar's unambiguous consent to be bound by that treaty. The instrument of accession must be signed by a competent representative of the Myanmar government who is authorized to bind Myanmar under international law. This is all explained more in the report itself. As the report also explains, these two options are not mutually exclusive. They may be pursued in parallel. Indeed, it is possible that by engaging both options simultaneously, it could be the most effective way in ultimately bringing the relevant crimes before the court. The essential difference between the two options is that under the first option, an Article 12.3 declaration, Myanmar would not become a state party to the Rome Statute. This would deprive Myanmar of the ability to participate in the proceedings of the Assembly of States Parties, which is the ICC's management, oversight, and legislative body. Myanmar would also forego the additional rights specifically afforded to Rome Statute member states. Now, those are at a high level the two procedural avenues available to the National Unity Government. The technicalities underlying each option are discussed in full in the report. However, the report also acknowledges the potential challenges to the National Unity Government's ability to bind Myanmar for purposes of international law. Specifically, the report acknowledges that the political legitimacy of rival governments is, generally speaking, a matter decided at the political level of individual sovereign states. Therefore, the degree to which individual governments that are a state party to the ICC recognize the National Unity Government as the legitimate government of Myanmar may help determine whether or not the National Unity Government can successfully bind Myanmar for purposes of international law. Because the junta regime in Myanmar itself claims to be the legitimate government representing the sovereign interests of the state, there's little doubt that action by the National Unity Government to pursue justice at the ICC will be challenged or debated in some form. Therefore, the report also does consider at some length the procedural means through which such challenges may be formally raised. At the same time, as Matt said, the report recognizes and explains that governments in exile and other governments that did not at the time wield effective control over the state that they represented, those states have successfully signed, ratified, or acceded to multiple treaties in the past. In many instances, governments did so over the express objection of one or more other states. Nonetheless, each treaty is unique, and the manner in which accession is affected or indeed challenged may vary from treaty to treaty. These concepts, too, are discussed in the report. In the Rome Statute context, no one has ever formally challenged an accession to the Rome Statute on the grounds that the government attempting to accede was not authorized to do so, nor has anyone challenged an Article 12.3 declaration on such grounds. Particularly, and for those wondering, this is distinct from the situation with regard to Palestine. Palestine both acceded to the Rome Statute and lodged an Article 12.3 declaration in 2015, and those actions were challenged in proceedings before a pretrial chamber of the International Criminal Court, which was at the time considering the issue of jurisdiction at the request of the prosecutor. Those challenges, however, were premised on differing political positions as to the existence of the state on whose behalf the government had acted. In other words, recognition of a state was at issue, not the legitimacy of one government over another. In that case, the pretrial chamber ultimately upheld jurisdiction and stated that it could not evaluate or deny the validity of Palestine's accession. Palestine remains a state party to the court today. I mention this because while the situations are distinguishable, certain parallels can be drawn, and many of the principles from the Palestinian example may be relevant to potential actions taken by the National Unity Government. Ultimately, Fortify Rights' report considers that prior precedent suggests the National Unity Government can pursue the actions discussed in the report. Apologies. I will now hand the screen back over to Matt, who will explain why Fortify Rights believes and finally recommends in its report that the National Unity Government should pursue those options.
Excellent, Mac. Thank you so much. Just one additional point I'd like to add in addition to what Mac shared there is that only state parties to the Rome Statute can challenge a validly deposited accession to the statute. This is explained in the report. States that would be expected to challenge the National Unity Government's ability to accede to the Rome Statute, such as China, Russia, or certain Southeast Asian governments, these states are not parties, they're not state parties to the Rome Statute. This means they have no standing to formally challenge the National Unity Government, or they would have no standing to formally challenge the National Unity Government's accession to the court within the Assembly of State Parties. The Myanmar junta also could not challenge an accession to the statute by the NUG unless the junta itself became a state party to the statute, which of course is highly unlikely. So for these reasons, according to the legal analysis in the report, a successful challenge to the National Unity Government's accession to the Rome Statute is unlikely. Before turning it over to Moon-Ne Lee, who will share a bit about the situation in Kachin State and her work, her human rights work, I would just mention that we do make several recommendations in the report to the National Unity Government as well as UN member states. And that, of course, includes a recommendation for UN member states to recognize the political legitimacy of the National Unity Government of Myanmar. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at those recommendations. So with that said, we will now turn to Moon-Ne Lee. Moon-Ne Lee, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Matt. Before I give my presentation, there is some background of the conflict that happened in our country. It's very based upon Panglong Agreement. That is the first peace agreement in Burma. So that is also very important to solve the conflict in our country. So my organization, as Matt already introduced, that we formed in 1999. Since then, we closely work with the community, especially the conflict-affected people, and also work with the women's community. and aim with to promote women participation in decision making at all levels, and also to oppose all forms of violence against women, including human trafficking, and working for justice and peace. That we walk through our research and human rights documentation and community awareness, empowerment to the women's and human rights survivors, and give service to the human rights survivors, and also doing the lobby and advocacy, both international and national levels. So based on our research and finding, for decades, the military regimes and its armed forces have been committing human rights abuses against the civilians throughout the country. And the army is perpetrating atrocity against the Kachin people on a widespread and systematically. And the human rights abuses, just kind of the killing, torture, forced labor, torturing, and also using the human shield and illegally arrested that happen in Burma are prevalent because of the culture of impunity. So the army, the military is also committed a lot of the crimes and human rights violation in the area, deliberate destruction of the civilians' houses and property, like the burning down of IDP camps, and also the burning of villages in the Kachin areas. And the looting, the robbing of the civilians' property, and shelling of civilians area that is very intentionally and targeted to the civilians. And another, the crimes is rape. That is also very seriously happen in our Kachin area. Rape and other forms of sexual violence, including the gang rape, has long been a part of the Burma Army's military campaigns against the ethnic resistance groups. After military coup, they also committed a lot of violence and crimes in the current situation. The mass arrest and violence crackdown on anti-coup protests and open fire to no longer openly leading demonstration. And there has been an increase in arbitrary shooting of civilians by the security forces. Until now, that is very targeted to the civilians and fire to the civilians when they come to the village. So according to analysis of the human rights violation, it is also very clear that war crimes and crimes against humanity happen in our Kachin areas. The human rights violations are not isolated incident, but are instead part of a deliberate policy by the military regimes. So the abuses being perpetrated against the Kachin people are also continually of same pattern, same impunity, and also likely amount to grave violation of international law, including war crimes and crimes against humanity. So the military attacking to the civilians is very clear that not simply the action of a few rogue soldiers, but rather are part of the army policy of systematically targeting to the civilians. Now, in our Kachin area, there is ongoing impunity, and continue the military junta, their troops are perpetrating a lot of crimes and atrocity against the Kachin people. Impunity does not only deny victims to the opportunity for justice, but also spread a culture of impunity in which human rights violation and crimes continue happen in our Kachin area. We have three very well-known cases that happen like the same pattern and same impunity. It is the gang rape, torture, murder. That happened in 2007. That is ceasefire, the periods in the Kachin areas. And the one case is happened in 2015 after the broken the ceasefire period. And also recently in July, after that military coup, that is also the same things happen. So very seriously happen in brutally. We cannot acceptable this thing. We don't want the other women's or girl happen this kind of, facing this kind of the crimes again. We are so sorry on this situation. The responsibility to protect also requires that where a government prove unwilling to protect its population from mass atrocity, UN member states take timely and with action to prevent and end atrocity against civilians. Because of the military attack on civilians have seriously, happened, that is a large-scale displacement adding to the existing humanitarian crisis in northern Burma. Now there is more than 130,000 villagers had been displaced from over more than 400 villages in Kachin area. So they also urgent need to support humanitarian aid. So the security of people from Burma is very high risk in current situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the military seriously attacked to the people. Before 1994, about the only 20 Burma Army battalions based in our Kachin areas. But in 2011, the Burma Army had already expanded its troop strength in Kachin during the ceasefire to about 80 battalions in Kachin area. Now, there is more than 200 battalions were being deployed against the Kachin resistance, including many infantry units from Lower Burma. So the international community must strongly condemn this crime committed by the military regimes and pressure to end all military aggression, begin troop withdrawal from Kachin areas to address the demand of ethnic equality at the root cause of the conflict. So I have some recommendation. We call for all foreign governments not to recognize the military junta and to endorse the NUG as the legitimate government of Burma. We also call all foreign donors to ensure that their aid is not legitimizing the junta and to provide humanitarian aid through cross-border channel. And finally, we want to call to ensure that Burma Army are here to account for their crime through a UN Security Council referral of the situation in Burma to the International Criminal Court. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Muneli, for that and for including those excellent and important recommendations. So we will now turn to Abdul Rasheed. Abdul Rasheed, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me here. And thank you, Kerry and everyone. First of all, I would like to say why this current military coup is happening. We are here to find a solution to reverse the military coup, to bring back our democracy. And more importantly, this not be repeated again. I believe this is a failure of international community to prevent military for the atrocity they committed before. So this is why I believe international community must think how they come up with the action to reverse the military coup and to bring back the democracy in our country. It is great to join this press conference, and I thank Fortify Rights as the organizer for this opportunity. Why is ending impunity so important in Myanmar? For decades, the Myanmar military, police, and other authorities have committed human rights violations that amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. They have committed these crimes with total impunity in numerous times for over 60 years since 1962. Our people do not feel safe under military junta. We seek protection for our people. It needs coordinated efforts, and efforts needed to be brought into actions. The Thermidor military has always enjoyed impunity. Now it is time to end the impunity. As a member of Rohingya community, I stand with the NUG. We Rohingya will fight together with NUG for the establishment of a true democratic system of government in Myanmar that values equal rights for all people of the land. We upload a courageous stand by the NUG opposing the military dictatorship and military coup. We express unequivocal support for the NUG that is the only solution for Myanmar and its people. We will work together to end impunity once for all for the better future for the all people of Myanmar. I call on the international community to suspend all engagement with the Burmese military junta and seek accountability in Myanmar. I urge the international community to recognize the NUG as the legitimate government of Myanmar. The Myanmar military coup is totally illegal, illegitimate, and against the will of the people of Myanmar. The international community should support and recognize the NUG, the National Unity Government, in their work to engage with the ICC. As a member of the Rohingya community, I have seen firsthand how the Myanmar junta and the previous government have used the 1982 citizenship law as a tool to strip the rights of the Rohingya people. As a result, we lost our citizenship right, voting rights, and other basic human rights. This system led to the genocidal attack in 2012, 2016, and 2017, which made hundreds of thousands of Rohingya people flee to the Bangladesh. In this movement, the NUG must revoke the 1982 citizenship law, which has oppressed all minorities, including Rohingya, for so long. Being a citizen of Myanmar, I want to live with the peace along with our neighbor, including India, China, Bangladesh, and Thailand. Our neighbor must stand with the people of Myanmar in this difficult time. We appreciate efforts of ASEAN countries and appointing of a special envoy to Myanmar, but should not be used as a means to time gaining, as life of our people are under threat. We are looking for urgent solutions. We are glad that NUG says it will cooperate with the International Court of Justice investigations, though China is blocking action. We also call upon the UN Security Council to refer the Myanmar military to the ICC. We call the United States to formal declaration of the genocide determination. We also call on the United Nations to sustain the credential of His Excellency U Chaw Moe as the legitimate permanent representative of the mission of the Myanmar to the United Nations. At this important moment, I strongly recommend that the NUG work to address all issues regarding the Rohingya community based on equality and justice. On behalf of the Rohingya community, I also recommend that the NUG work quickly to restore all rights of the Rohingya people, along with the full citizenship. We Rohingya people demand nothing extra, just equality and equal treatment with other minorities. We also recommend the NUG leaders work to end all forms of discriminatory policies and practices against all minorities. We are with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abdul Rasheed, for those powerful remarks and recommendations, which I think are a perfect segue to our next and final speaker, Minister Wuang Yeomin from the National Unity Government of Myanmar. Thank you again, Minister Myo, for joining us. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all speakers and my appreciation to your insight. Special thanks to Monelli for updating human rights situation in Kachin right now. We are very much concerned with the human rights violations all across the country, and my respect to the human rights defenders struggling against military and the struggling for a future genuine federal democratic union. Let me start by saying our statement that NUG has been formed to represent and realize the needs of the people of Myanmar. Our legitimacy derived from the people of Myanmar that have overwhelmingly rejected the unlawful action of the military. I am the Ministry of Human Rights, and my role as the Minister of Human Rights, our ministry has been striving for documentation of human rights violations by the junta right now, any culture of impunity, and a mainstreaming human rights standard in the whole operation of the National Union government. Ministry of Human Rights is working on documentation and analyzing human rights violation by military, coordinating with the international human rights mechanisms, and leading the government initiative on human rights. These initiatives include development of position paper on Rohingya crisis. In the NUG position paper on Rohingya released in June 2021, the National Unity Government clearly expressed the position on Rohingya people in Myanmar as follows. Number one, acknowledgement of past crime by the military. We well understand the violence and gross human rights violation against people, including Rohingya, by the military for decades. The NUG acknowledged that the military commitment crime against humanity, war crime, and the genocide against the ethnic people, including Rohingya, resulting in the untold numbers of murders, torture, rape, and many forms of human rights violations. Then it's left hundreds and thousands of people to flee their homes to neighboring countries. Number two, accountability and justice. NUG strongly believe that bringing the perpetrators to account is not only for the realization of justice, but also act as a deterrent against future atrocity. Therefore, we regard this as a priority task. Reparation and justice will be ensured in the future Federal Democratic Union Constitution. We will actively seek justice and accountability for all crimes committed by the military against all people of Myanmar, including Rohingya people. Number three, acceptance and follow-up of the Mr. Kofi Annan's Commission's recommendations. We consider that 88 recommendations set up in the first final report of the Advisory Commissions on Rakhine State, chaired by Dr. Kofi Annan, must play a crucial role in addressing the affairs in Rakhine State. These recommendations are based on solution for the root causes of violence. However, over the past 4 years, much has changed to make the situation worse in Rakhine State and many other parts of the country. So using this recommendation, as well as other relevant recommendations as inputs, we honestly believe that we can work together with all the people in Rakhine State and to chart a new courses toward democratic, inclusive, and prospective future. Number four, as the previous speakers mentioned, reviewing and repealing 1982 citizenship law. The process of repealing, amending, and promulgating laws, including 1982 citizenship law, by the new constitution, when the drafting completed, will be beneficial in resolving the conflict in Rakhine State. This new citizenship must base citizen on the birth in Myanmar or birth anywhere as child of Myanmar citizen. We further commit to abolishing the process of issuing national verification cards, a process that the military has used against Rohingya people and other ethnic groups, and with human rights violations. The Rohingyas are entitled to citizenship by laws that were accorded with the fundamental human rights, and democratic federal principles. Number 5, safe repatriation of Rohingya refugees from Bangladesh. The voluntary, safe, and dignified repatriation of Rohingya who fled to neighboring countries from Rakhine State due to the tramadol or military violence is crucial matter. We reaffirm the agreements signed with the neighboring countries for the repatriation process. We are ready to cooperate with all stakeholders of goodwill in a special programs to implement the process. We are committed to the repatriation of Rohingyas as soon as repatriation can be accomplished voluntarily, safely, and with dignity. Number 6, engaging with the Rohingya people. The NUG is committed to an inclusive future Myanmar. This is why we are engaging with Rohingya people as well as representatives from other ethnic and religious minority groups in the country to understand each other, to work in hands, and to move forward for the future of federal democratic union. So these are some positions we clearly mentioned in our position. But now, since our position paper was announced in June 2021, NUG has taken some significant steps because the position paper is not alone effective until it's implemented and some action taken. With the ICJ, NUG will fully accept the decision of the ICJ in determining whether crimes committed against Rohingya people amount to genocide. While ICJ carry out the mandate, the NUG will fully cooperate with the ICJ and all stakeholders to bring justice. The NUG is ready to follow the justice decision of the world's highest court. And with the ICC, the Fortify Rights and many other speakers mentioned about the NUG should sign the ICC. I'm very pleased to make a special announcement today that NUG sent a letter to the ICC on 17th of July this year, mentioning its willingness to become the signatory of Rome Statute. Further to Article 12, Paragraph 3 of the ICC, NUG recognized the jurisdiction of the court for the purpose of identifying, examining, investigating, prosecuting, and the adjudication person responsible for crime within the jurisdiction of the court committed in the territory in Myanmar since July 1st, 2002. It was signed by the acting president of the NUG. So very pleased to announce that NUG already taken steps, the recommendation that made by the very good friends of us. NUG, we are looking forward to collaborating with ICC for justice and accountabilities. In conclusion, I would like to say that Nui U Torlan Ye, Spring Revolution is our collective struggle to end discriminatory actions, oppressions, and crime against humanity, either by law or institution arrangement or systems. And the ultimate goal of our revolution is to build a society in which human dignity is not optional. People from all backgrounds, including Rohingya, are joining our revolution. In this spirit, let me express the strong will of NUG to work hand in hand with all those, including Rohingya people, who want to achieve the set goal for our future generation. Thank you so much, and thank you and appreciation for giving a chance to speak, to make a statement and clear up the clear possession of the NUG in this important event. Thank you again.
Wuang Yeomin, thank you so much for those remarks, and thank you very much for that special announcement. And just to reiterate for those in attendance or those watching, Minister Wuang Yeomin just announced that the National Unity of Government of Myanmar, I believe you said on July 17th, issued a 12.3 declaration to the International Criminal Court, delegating jurisdiction to the court. This is a highly significant step by the National Unity Government. We certainly at Fortify Rights applaud you, Minister Myo, for that move, and your colleagues within the National Unity Government. We have some questions, so we'll now we'll open the floor for questions. I see some questions already coming in. As a reminder, please either raise your virtual hand using the button, or you can type your questions. And of course, please also announce your affiliation. A first question, I might take the liberty to ask Minister Myo a question. If you may clarify for those in attendance, the period with which the National Unity Government will be delegating jurisdiction to the ICC, starting from what year and to what date, if you may clarify, that would be helpful.
Yeah, as I mentioned in my statement, it's jurisdiction from July 1st of 2002.
Excellent, thank you so much. We can start in on some of these questions in the order that they came in. We have a question from Hart Murphy, a journalist in Thailand, who asks about the ICJ process. Is that a dead letter? Is there still an opportunity for other nations to join the Gambia's suit? I believe the answer to that is certainly there are other governments should indeed support the Gambia's effort. And as we heard from Minister Aung Yeomin, the National Unity Government will accept the ICJ's determination with regard to that case. There's another question from the same speaker, and I believe this would be directed to Aung Yeomin. Let's see here if I can just pull it up. Question, Wuang Yeomin, is about, I'll just read it out. It says, how would an NUG appeal to the ICC be reconciled with the NLD's previous stand on the ICJ proceedings? I don't know if that's something that you'd be interested to address.
So you want me to start?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned in our statement, the NUG is cooperating with the ICJ. We submitted our third report about how we are following the interim positions of the ICJ. So we did our job. They're saying that what we have done and what are the challenges we face during this kind of circumstance, because the military is the one taking over the power and also trying to stop any kinds of good deeds of the NUG and other people. So we submitted our third report that how we are following that one. So we are very good, the cooperation relation with the ICJ. So we are waiting for what is their consideration of ICJ and their judgment, because we are not in a position of making judgment, so that the court will make a decision. So we are fully accomplished the future process and any decision of the ICJ. So that is our position again. So that we are both, cooperating both ICJ and ICC at the same time. So ICJ, we are, as I mentioned, that we submitted the report, but ICC, this is the first initiative steps of showing our interest of, submitting the declaration, our interest of ratification process. So we haven't received any reply yet. We hope that they will reply so we can have a clear procedures. So we will be following up and implementing every step required for the government to proceed it. So this is in the proceeding situation and proceeding steps we are now working on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Very much appreciated. We have a question from an anonymous attendee directed to Fortify Rights that says, why does Fortify Rights believe NUG is representative of the majority of people, and how does it know or measure this? You can, this is addressed in the chapter 1 of the report, and we reference the way in which the National Unity Government was formed via CRPH by elected officials from the 2020 elections. And we do believe that the National Unity Government is representative of the sovereign will of the people of Myanmar. I think it's also represented through the millions of people that we saw on the protesting in one way or another, whether it was on the streets of Myanmar still happening or in other various forms. And this is on behalf of Fortify Rights, at least, this is in part how we assess that situation. Do any of the other speakers, we already heard from Abdul Rasheed and Moon Lee on this question, so on the legitimacy of the National Unity Government, and I think we can perhaps move to the next question. So we have another question here. Supposing would the Tatmadaw, I think this is perhaps a question for you. Would the Tatmadaw report for a hearing? I think the question is meant, would the Tatmadaw, if there were an indictment, would the Tatmadaw report for hearing in the Hague? What legal sanctions would an ICC indictment carry, even if the Tatmadaw refuses to comply with the court? Is this something, Mac, that you'd like to address in terms of?
Generally speaking, sure. The ICC is essentially a criminal court, and so the same processes of trial in many domestic courts apply, and they would typically defendants will be present, and they will be loath to continue with the prosecution without a defendant present. And so it would not be so much an issue of participation as opposed to an arrest. And so an arrest would be issued pursuant to a validly issued warrant. And proceedings would only begin after a validly issued arrest warrant is executed.
Thank you so much, Mac. We have another question here from, let's see here. There's a question from David Wolfberg from the Human Rights Action Center. What is the current and future planned makeup of the Minister of Human Rights Advisory Board? I'm not sure what that is. Minister Myo, is that something that you'd like to speak to?
Yes, of course. In that structure of the NUG, and each ministry can appoint the advisory board of the ministries, and who can give technical support, issue and thematic, support to help the ministry is running in the right directions. So we've MOHR, Ministry of Human Rights, already, set up the advisory boards. And so ministry is a human right. We should respect the diversity of the people. And then this is our, one of the aims and objectives. So we set up we already have 5 people that include women, ethnic, and also the people with Rohingya and Yakai background. So we set up this, human rights advisories to make sure that they come from the different backgrounds, to respect the diversity. They have an experience of human rights issue that they can contribute for giving advice or recommendation to the function of the ministry. So we set it up already. the meeting of the advisory board will be in next week. So after that, we can make a public announcement, who are in the advisory board. So this is the advisory board who will be closely working with the Ministry of Human Rights. And I want to show that we have advisory board member from gender background, ethnic background, and other human rights background, and also geographic background.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Wuang. We have. I'm afraid you will most likely get most of the questions here today, and I apologize for that burden on you. But we have some 3 questions from a journalist, Yuichi Nida. 2 questions to Yeomin. First question: how will the National Unity Government investigate the responsibility extended to the NLD government, which was in power 2016 to 2021? Is that question?
As a human rights, activist, my background. So I see the human rights violation as a human rights violations, no matter who committed and no matter who are victimized. So we will take all the human rights violation as a human rights violations. So clear the access to the investigation, and then fair judgment on the cases, and then people have a right to information, right to defense is where we practice. So we don't see that who did what and who did to whom. So we would think human rights violation as a human rights violation. Crime is crime. So this is my question to answer to the first question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Second question: does the new plan for amending the 1982 law in the position paper on the Rohingya crisis suggest that Myanmar will accept Rohingya people as its own citizen and as a recognized ethnic group?
Oh yes, as I've clearly mentioned that the citizenship should be based on the birth, not based on the race, because we see that there's a many discriminatory practice if the citizenship is based on the races or nationalities. What we said, it's not only affect to the Rohingya people alone, but there's a many other ethnic people, like sub tribes in some of the ethnic groups also suffer because of the races. So that is our first steps, and recognition, and also that ethnicities. It could be really the process, because this is a position. Position without process is just a piece of paper. So we will need to do lots of series of consultation on the issue, not only with the one group of the people. That should be inclusive, that everyone can discuss about it. So that the consultants and finding this kind of answer is already started by different respective ministry of the NUG in cooperation with many stakeholders. So we are discussing that one, and then we can make a clear position about how the recognition of this issue would be in the future after the comprehensive and inclusive consultation with many people.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next question is directed to Fortify Rights. And that question is, a year ago, 2 Myanmar soldiers were moved to The Hague after being released from AA. Is there any update about them? I can speak briefly to that. I believe it was September 9th that 2 soldiers from the Tatmadaw who had confessed to mass atrocities against the Rohingya people were were transferred to The Hague in the Netherlands on September 9th last year. This is the first time that any perpetrators from Myanmar were in the hands of the ICC. Due to the nature of the court, these types of any sort of updated status about those 2 individuals has not been made public. But again, just to reiterate, that was a situation in which the first 2 perpetrators from Myanmar to be transferred to The Hague occurred. I'm realizing the time. We have gone over the hour. If it's okay, I might still run through a couple questions to see. We have a lot more questions that have come in here, so I'll do my best to take a look. Just one moment. Okay, so here's a question from Minzaw, again, to the Minister Myo. So, and it reads, my question is in regards to the repatriation. If there ever was a multilateral agreement crafted with the Bangladesh government, would the Rohingya still be subjected to the inhumane and endless? No, I'm sorry. I think this question was already addressed. This is a question about the NVC process, which the minister was very clear about that. So we'll move past that. And then we have a question for Munneli and for Abdul Rasheed. For both of you, from your perspectives, how important is the National Unity Government's efforts to grant jurisdiction to the ICC? Munneli, would you like to address that first?
Yes. Firstly, that to make accountable the crimes that happen in our, not only in Kachin, but also the whole country, especially in ethnic areas, is very important for taking like a international accountability, like a ICJ or ICC. So we hope that NUG is a form of government of the country in Burma. So they can do a lot of things for signing the Rome Statute and also, support to the human rights survivors and all these transitional justice thing they can implement in the ground. Yes, so I hope that to the NUG government can do that. And also now the NUG government and most of the minister and deputy minister come from the activists and human rights defender. So I hope that they all already understand and respect on that human right. Yes.
Abdul Rasheed, please. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think prevention of crimes and atrocities is a very important factor. And what I believe the current military coup is due to Myanmar was not signatory of the Rome Statute. This is very positive movement by NUG because I also believe that international community should come up with their support to NUG for the signature to become a signatory of the ICC. So for the prevention of this kind of atrocities in future. That's why I think it's very important and very good initiative by NUG. We support this, and I also want international support to for the NUG government for this effort as well. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. We have a question for Carrie Kennedy. Carrie, you had mentioned genocide determination is critical. Could you speak a little bit more about that and who specifically should make the genocide determination?
Well, I think, it's considering all the evidence, it's clear that genocide was perpetrated against the Rohingya. And the fact that that the government has never been held responsible for the genocide has allowed them to perpetrate the coup and continue these massive violations of human rights. And that's why it's critical to do so. I think there's a number of places that can happen, but the ICC is certainly one of them.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We have a question from Aaron Rosenberg. Aaron, I'm going to try to unmute you. Mook, can you help me unmute Aaron so she can ask a question? Go
Can you
ahead,
hear
Aaron. Floor is
Oh,
yours.
Yeah, I put my question also in the chat, but I just wanted to ask the question, given that the ICC has an open investigation in relation to the crime of forcible deportation, meaning crimes that occurred in part in Myanmar, but also on the territory of Bangladesh, giving the ICC jurisdiction already and the prosecutor opening a proprio motu investigation. Is the NUG committed to assisting in the current investigation in terms of the forcible deportation of the Rohingya? And will those members of the NUG that were in the previous government be assisting or providing information, cooperating with the Office of the Prosecutor in terms of gathering evidence in that investigation?
So Minister Wuang, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so since this is, as I mentioned, this is the first initiative that, showing our interest of the signing a ratification of ICC. And then that's lots of, preparation we need to do. And so we need the cooperation and collaboration with the other groups. And also we can find out our strategies and also discussion among the cabinet and among the government and concerned ministers. So we will have the kind of in-depth discussion. If our letter or declaration accepted, what is another step? How can we make sure that this is a genuine desire for NUG to bring justice back to the people? And then what are the practical steps that we should, in collaboration with for investigation, for documentation, and for the other, giving access to the victims who can report without any fear or any threat. So that will be follow up. And then we should have a kind of the local groups cooperation as well, because we need to have a good coordination and cooperation with the Bangladesh government for having access or conducting some kind of investigation. And also in that area, Rakhine State or Rakhine area, that we need to get the cooperation with the other groups who are, operating and mobilizing in the issue to ensure that the independent investigation, the quality of documentation, and then getting the facts that for the justice cases, judicial documentation is, should be well cooperated with the people on the ground at the same time. And also some kind of the information by the previous government and some of the obstacles why the government, the NLD government has not done so well should be also, clarified and giving the information out. Because, we learned that some people in the previous, in the government, they have an intention. They stand on the human rights principle, but that sometimes they couldn't do beyond the military is over controlling everything. And at the same time, the policy of the previous government is say that the national reconciliation is a must. Some of the issues are very ignored. So we should have to get some insights, information, and some of the clear picture, internal clear pictures, why the people couldn't do that much as the way it should be. So I think that is another phase of our actions, getting, cooperating and clear step-by-step actions and what kind of information we can provide for the independent investigation and make sure that, who are actually perpetrating behind the scenes.
Thank you so much. And I think we may just have time for one more question, and then we can do some final remarks from the panelists if they choose to take that opportunity. We have a question from John Packer, who's a longtime friend of the people of Myanmar. And John says, simple question to the minister. is the NUG still contesting the Gambia and will respond that there has not been any breach of the Genocide Convention, is his question.
Okay, we submit our third report about the update situation, how we have been doing in respecting the order by the court. So that will be a hearing and also some kind of processing. So based on that, we will find out how we can cooperate. But our principle is we acknowledge things are happening. This kind of crimes has been taken place. So not defending, but we were saying that telling the truth and then showing our in cooperation with the ICJ judicial systems.
Thank you so much for that. There are a lot more questions coming in, and I would just like to extend apologies to those of you who typed up your very thoughtful questions. We have run out of time, I'm afraid, but I would like to give all of the panelists an opportunity to give some final remarks here today. And I think we can just do it in the order that we spoke. So Carrie, if you'd like, the floor is yours for final remarks.
I just want to say again, my thanks to Fortify Rights for putting together this excellent report and for inviting me to be part of this group today with such extraordinarily brave people. And RFK Human Rights will continue to advocate on behalf of the Rohingya and the people of Myanmar for democracy and for justice in the wake of genocide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And Mac, would you like to say any final words?
I just wanted to express my thanks to Minister Aung Yeomin for joining us and for sharing the honest and candid responses with us that he has. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mac. Moon-Ne Lee, final remarks from you?
Thank you so much. Because to end this atrocity and crimes in Myanmar, we also have to destroy the military power. So that's why since we gained independence from British colony, we still facing this kind of the abuses by the military. So that's why this is a very important time to listen the voices from the ground, the people from the ground, the civilians. So it is very important things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moon-Ne Lee. Abdul Rasheed, final remarks from you? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Thank you so much, Matt, for your excellent report, and organizing this event is very important. I must say thank you to Minister, so because his willingness about to address the Rohingya issues, including citizenship, ethnic rights, and all issues, including the repatriations, was they considering is highly appreciated. And their willingness to work together with the Rohingya community. So it's a great, we support and we highly acknowledge this. Thank you, Minister Aung Yeomin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abdul Rasheed. Minister Aung Yeomin, would you like to give any final remarks?
Yeah, Myanmar has a long history of human rights violation and atrocity, and the culture of human rights being taking place, is a deeply rooted because of the systems and mindset and the political will, lack of political will. So I think this culture of impunity must be stopped immediately. So that's why we are bringing justice and accountabilities to stop this kind of culture of human rights, culture of impunity, and bringing justice and accountable back to the system and repeal all this kind of oppression and giving a remedy for the survival of the victim, survival of the human rights violations, so that we are dealing with the past. And also for the future, that we also bringing some kind of, the transitional justice issue, make sure that no one can be, away from the accountability and justice system for their perpetration of the human rights violations. But at the same time, we should be aware of the present situation. The military is committing various forms of human rights across the people, across the country. So, and every country is suffering the gross human rights violation by the military who want to hold on the power. So for your information, since the military coup, that the dead number of the dead people or killed by the military reach out more than 1,000. So we also should be aware of that. This is the ongoing human rights violations. We did our best for the past. We are preparing for the best for the future, but also we are facing the challenges at the present time. So I think it's very important to find the most realistic and practical way to stop all kinds of human rights violation by the military. The peoples inside the countries are sacrificing and taking a great risk to show their expression against the military. At the same time, the NUG is working for as much as we could, even in the many challenging times. So we also need the international, action to support the movement, and also people of Myanmar, and then to stop any kinds of, supplies and recognition to the military junta. So that's also we can work for the current situation to stop the violations, human rights violation immediately. And then I'd like to make another announcement, small announcement. We're going to have a press release of our, our submission of the declaration to the ICC right after this, so that you can have access to in our NUG page and website as soon as when it is posted. So you can have a more clear information about that. And also on the 25th, this is the anniversary of the Rohingya, suffering. So as a Ministry of Human Rights, I accepted to speak more position and the future plan of the NUG regarding the Rohingya. But also not only the Rohingya, because we also, other ethnic people like Kachin, Shan, Karen, peoples are suffering. So we have a kind of, comprehensive statement, what we like to do and how we can make sure that accountability is prevailed for every people in the country, including Rohingya and others. This is going to be, we're going to have another round of statement regarding on the occasion of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Wuang Yeomin. In closing here today, we would like to thank all of the speakers. I'm very humbled and honored to join you today, and our team is as well. Special thanks to our interpreter for the simultaneous interpretation. And I'd also like to thank the fantastic and amazing team at Fortify Rights and our colleagues who have been working very hard behind the scenes to help keep this event smooth and clear. And thank you also to all the attendees. We have a considerable number of people joining us both here on Zoom and on Facebook Live. Thank you so much for taking time to join in this conversation today. You can download a copy of the report that's published today, the Fortify Rights report, at our website, fortifyrights.org, or via the social media platform of your choice. And as Minister Wuang Yeomin mentioned, the National Unity Government will have a press release available as well. And I believe it is www.nugmyanmar.org, or I assume on social media platforms as well. Everyone, thank you so much for this informative event. And with that, we will conclude the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.